Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. It's on my phone. Um, Thank you all for joining in again. To everybody who's joined this live feed, I'm having a few problems here, technical problems. We've got another big weather event here, and it seems to be playing up a little with my internet, particularly me uploading my video. So one thing that might happen is if my video really starts to pixelate and slow everything down, we'll just go to voice only for a little while. So my apologies for that. But anyway, welcome. Thank you all for joining me again. Well, I'd love to see if we can get a whole variety of questions moving today that includes Jane, but talks about some of the other things that you've asked questions about in the past and have wanted to talk about. So I've got some questions preloaded that people have sent in, and I'll go to those in a second as you're sending in your questions. One of the things I just wanted to let everybody know is that the new chapter of Dragonblade goes up tomorrow. It's taken me a while to write it. There's so many threads that I'm trying to pull together as we gallop towards the finishing line. I think this episode is the penultimate, and there's just one episode after that, but it could be quite a long one. And it's going to leave everybody hanging, but that's the best thing, isn't it? At the end of a story is to set up for another book. The other thing I wanted to say is that those of you who haven't had a chance to start reading it yet or weren't aware of it, my new project, which is my Wonderland trilogy, which I'd love to talk a little bit more about, that's now going to be free, the way the Jane and the Dragon one is, as an experiment. So the first one of that is up. So you just need to go to it on my website, click in there, and you can read the first. I think it's just the prologue up there at the moment. But if you could subscribe in, then you'll get each chapter. I think we're going to be delivering one a week. So that's happening, and I'd love to get your feedback on that and talk more about that. It's a project that's consuming me at the moment. I know those of you who love Jane and the Dragon may want me just to focus on Jane and the Dragon, but I am going to focus on Jane and the Dragon too in parallel. Now that I've given up my day-to-day management role at Gecko Pictures and I'm just in the creative space, it actually leaves me a lot more time to write. So I will be able to do both, I hope. Anyway, to some of your questions, I've got one here from Barry. This is Barry. You were asking, in one of my posts, I talked about writing and concentration and how to use the brain rhythms. Can you explain more? Barry, what I was referring to there is there's a lot of different research around this, and it's been going on for a long time, that we understand that the brain has its own cycles in the daytime as well as at night. We've known the cycles are there for a long time at nighttime because the brain's much quieter and it's much easier to see the movement from deep delta sleep up through to REM, rapid eye movement, then back down into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, which is kind of delta sleep. And that rhythm, it varies with different people, but it's about, say, 90 minutes. Let's call it the 90-minute cycle. We're now realizing that is happening during the day as well. And if you meditate a lot, and if you focus on what your brain's doing, and meditation is really just stepping back from being the brain and watching the brain, so you can see how your brain-mind activity is operating, and you can start to tell when that rhythm and that cycle is happening. It's being used a lot in education to help students understand when to study and when to stop studying and when to relax, and essentially what appears to be happening is there's periods of high activity and concentration, then there goes to a period of equivalent almost to REM sleep, to dreaming, where you're, let's call it daydreaming. And daydreaming is just an old name, really, for the brain starting to share information between different areas of the brain, figuring out how to store, how to use that information, how to go from this deep, analytic, focused mental study to incorporating that study into the background of knowledge. And if you don't have that period, if you just try to focus more, it actually can be counterproductive. Now, in writing, it's really quite useful to be able to feel that. It's hi Haley from TikTok. Hello. It's very helpful to be able to feel that because if those of you who write will have experienced this, that sometimes you're staring at a blank piece of paper and you're trying to force it to happen. Other times you can be writing, it's just flowing really beautifully. And I think the way I use it is I just start writing and then I can experience where my brain's at. And the way I start writing is I have to re-engage the world. So I read back over the last 3 or 4 chapters and I start editing and tweaking them and adding in more information. And that kind of helps me understand where my brain's at, because if as I'm engaging with that, the story starts to flow, then I know I'm in that very productive state. And it usually lasts for about anything between 20 to 40 minutes. And then it gets harder. And then I realize that I need to just relax and daydream a little bit, go away, make a cup of tea, come back, sit at the screen. And then something's been going on in the brain in terms of how it's interpreting the material and making connections, and you get back into that little creative phase again. So the more you know how your own brain works and what those cycles are, the easier it is to harness that and make it helpful to you rather than fight against it. There's all sorts of helpful information all over the internet about this. So if it is something that interests you, just look at the diurnal rhythms of the brain and concentration, and there's a lot of helpful tips out there. Okay, the next question that comes from Johnny B is actually about Dragonblade. And yes, Johnny, you ask how many chapters are left for Dragonblade. It feels like a big ending is coming. Yeah, we're getting very close. So the chapter that's going live tomorrow is probably the penultimate chapter, and then one more big chapter after that. Very big, I think. Melissa, you looked up Turnkey after I spoke about it last time, and it's a real name. How cool! Yes, it is a real name, and I'm sure it's the same all around the world. But so many of our surnames have come from our trades. You know, Weaver, Potter, Wheelwright, Wainwright, Thatcher. They were all your profession, your craft, and the Turnkey became a name. And there's a lot of people obviously have the name Turnkey now in the UK and around the world, or variations of it as it gets corrupted over the years. So, and many people are called Turkey. It's nothing to do with Turkey or turkeys. They have often come just from Turnkey. And Turnkey, yes, as I mentioned, it comes from jailer, the man who turned the key, like a locksmith, but a little bit darker than a locksmith. Cool. Next one that I've got lined up. Rita Ray, can I explain how you get into Roblox? I've mentioned Roblox a couple of times. And for those of you who aren't really, who I haven't caught up on the Roblox discussion, we had an experiment wanting to understand how to build out Jane's world and some of our other worlds inside the metaverse. The metaverse is an experience that's going to be, I think, very much a part of our future. How quickly, we just don't know, but very much part of our future. And Roblox is if you like, a little proto metaverse. It operates like a metaverse in that you can go in there either just like a game, like you would in a game, watching it on your screen and using your keyboard, or in there with VR glasses on and wander around. It's for very young children, but why I really like Roblox, it's been beautifully set up to be very child friendly, very child safe. And so it was a place we felt completely confident that we could set something up, and the behavior is not like some of the rather toxic behavior online that happens in some of the other metaverse experiences that are developing, like Fortnite and many others. I don't want to call out anybody in particular, but yeah, with Roblox, it's very child centric, but that doesn't mean it's not a lot of fun for adults too. It just means that when you go in there, you're figuring out walking around you and trying to figure out who you are and join in, play games with you. But if you go to my website, if we don't have it now, we will put up links to be able to get into the Jane Castle site that we built in Roblox, so you can go in there with friends and just walk around. Really, we haven't had time to build any of the interiors yet, but we hope to in time. More importantly, for what I want to start experiencing is how do books work in the metaverse. So to do that, we've developed a little Roblox site for my book, Hungry Bears. This is the show where that mimics the shared reading experience, which is so important for young children, where the bears find a book and they sit down and they read together, just like a parent or a relative or an older sibling will with a child. And this is known to be one of the building blocks of learning to read. So yeah, go on in, have a look, and we've stuck in there, and you can experience the, if you like, reading a book in the metaverse in a very child-centric way. I think that is going to be something that's going to grow and grow. Haley from my apologies that I keep repeating the questions. The point of that is some people are, just listening with the pictures off if they, and we also might move these into a podcast form later, so it's good to repeat the question. And Haley from TikTok, you're asking, do I have a favorite pencil you like to draw with and a type of paper? Yes, I do, Haley. The style that I developed over the years was a mixture of colored pencil and using ink afterwards. And both those require a different kind of paper in a way. With colored pencils, you want it to be slightly fibrous so it picks up as the paper's breaking, as the pencil is breaking off and leaving the colored dust sort of tangled up in the fibers of the paper. That's obviously how colored pencils work. And you'll know that with an HB versus a 2B versus a 3B, the softer the graphite clay is, the easier it is to spread out and be trapped by the fibers. So there's that whole process. Do I have any to show? Yes, I do. Hold on. I think I do. Have them quickly to hand. Yeah, and so just going, before I show them to you, going back to that point, with ink, you really want a more shiny paper, because otherwise the ink sort of oozes out and goes ink blobby and spreads out in a spidery fashion through the fibers. So I found a good board that was a nice mix of fibers that could take the pencil, but ink that could go onto it afterwards and not spread out. And it's Bristol board. It's called Bristol board. It's not paper. It's not a. It's not the name of a manufacturer. So different paper companies will make Bristol board. and it has a beautiful smoothness, but a fiber texture to it. And then they have an old-fashioned way of talking about its thickness. They used to call it in an imperial measurement of sheets. You could get 1 sheet, 2 sheet, 3 sheets. And I guess in my own way, like 2 sheets was twice as thick as 1 sheet, and 3 sheets was 3 times as thick as 1 sheet. But I don't actually know what the measurements mean. But I used Bristol board 3 sheet. I used to buy it in big A2, and then cut it down to the size I wanted. And I always illustrated at twice print size. So whatever the final print size was going to be, I'd be drawing at 200%. So it allowed me to get a lot of detail into it that I wouldn't if I did a one-to-one. And you've asked me, do I have any to show? So these are the ones I mostly use. It's Caran d'Ache. There we go, Caran d'Ache. They and you can buy them as individual colors, or there we are, it's upside down. Prismola. They also make a water soluble one, so be very careful. If you like working with watercolor as well, it's a great way to blend in with watercolors, is using the Caran d'Ache water soluble ones, and you can add in afterwards. You can do a watercolor base and then add color and intensity to it using the pencils, and then but then as you add more water afterwards, of course, what you've done will splurge and mix. I used the ones which weren't watercolor, so they don't. If you drop water on them, they don't sort of. When you put the ink on, it doesn't pick up the color pencil. Cool. Yeah, so that's the paper and the pencils I used historically. Now, like many other people, I also work on Photoshop. But the interesting thing with Photoshop is, it's got a lot of things which are really wonderful about it, but I find I can't get the sweeping movement of the pencil the same, no matter how I use a Wacom tablet and all the rest of it. There's something for me, and for generations who've just grown up with Photoshop, they find it difficult sometimes to go the other way and go, oh my God, a pencil, how does that work? And it trips them up as it gets stuck on the paper. But yeah, I do enjoy working in Photoshop, and in Photoshop, I really am trying to mimic the way that I work on real paper and pencil to get what I might call the Martin Bainton look, the style that I use. Cool. Roxy, how many books in the Wonderland series, and do I know where it ends? It's a trilogy. At the moment, I see it as a trilogy. That's as far ahead as I can think with the story. But it's a very, very big story, and I hope it will go to more than 3. In my mind, the main story arc has three novels to it, and I know everything that happens in those 3 novels, but it does end on quite a dark place that resolves all the main issues for the main character, but opens the story up to going much, much, much bigger, and to sit on the shoulders of characters than just Ali, my Alice. Okay, that's all the questions I've got. So if anybody else has got any other questions, please flick them through. Otherwise, I'm going to chat about the things that I'd like to chat about today. So flick through any questions if you've got them. One of the things we're doing is trialing different times. So please do let us know if it's working for you. We may have to do several of these and do them a little bit shorter so that we can make sure that people in the UK can join us, people in the US and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, etc., etc. And no time's perfect for everybody, but it's easy for me. I can do several of these at different times. one of the things I really wanted to talk about a little bit is how best to interface with you. When you send me questions, um, I want to be able to answer them. I want to be able to um, make it so it's very useful to you. Are my pictures freezing a bit? We may, because clearly we've got, and and it's not a particularly good time for a lot of you today. So there's not many questions coming in. So let's call it a day for today. Let me know if this was a good time or a bad time for you. We'll try and put these onto posts so that if those of you who couldn't join us today won't miss out. But those of you who have joined, thank you very much indeed. And we'll send you another time when that might be more useful for everybody. Lovely. Blessings to you. Oh, hold on. One from Erica. Hi, Erica. Have you ever thought about doing something of a watch along, but it's just going over the episode and dropping trivia? Yes. Yes, thank you, Erica. We had an experiment doing that, but it's a bandwidth issue. So what I've got to do is either go somewhere else to do it, or go to a different, figure out how to improve my bandwidth so I can do it from home. But yeah, no, I'd love to do that. And it raises all sorts of memories as I'm watching it. So of nostalgic memories around some of the people that were working on the show at the time. And some of the issues that were raised at the time of writing it, issues which were current then but which aren't current now. So yeah, I will try that, Erica. It'll just be a bandwidth issue, so we'll figure out how to do it. It's not something that I guess my generation have much experience in. Feels kind of strange just watching a TV show and chatting about it. But I know that it does create opportunities for insights for myself too that I wouldn't otherwise think to talk about. So we'll give that a go, Erica. Yeah. Hey, again, I'm sorry about that. Haley from TikTok. Do you give feedback on person's book or illustrations? My part draws and honestly is amazing. Haley, I don't. The reason I don't is it gets a little bit, it can become quite overwhelming. I've had a few experiences of that where, for instance, I was asked to um, to to judge competitions for schools and for writing assignments and things, and you would get hundreds of young people doing beautiful work, and I wanted to give each one the right amount of time and courtesy. So it actually becomes quite hard to do in a way that's meaningful, and if you open up the process to there are secondary issues around it, which is how you get that artwork to me, how I look at it, how I keep myself safe from it being uh, me being told I've borrowed it later on. It happened to me once. Someone asked me to criticize a story they'd written, and I wrote back and said, it's very difficult for me to criticize it because it's exactly like one I've written myself, so I have to pass on criticizing it. And they then created a difficult situation for me because they said I'd stolen that story, and I ended up never publishing it because it was just too painful. So that's not because I don't want to. It's just it's a reason why it gets a little bit difficult. Hi, Bob. Do I prefer drawing with a pencil on paper or drawing with a stylus on my comp? It depends what the project is. I much, much prefer sketching on paper. Um, and and of course, that way you can get the best of both worlds, right? Because you can sketch, you can be very, very free with your sketching. You can then scan it, drop it in, and use it as a base layer to Photoshop on top of. But it's giving you that freedom. I think I find the Wacom, the style, the sensitivities, and all those things. A lot of people got very, very good with it. But I'm most comfortable with something that thin. And when you go from something that thin to something that thick, I know this is a much thicker Wacom tablet than a lot of the modern people are using, but the balance and how the finger has learned to draw. And after all, what is our expertise other than thousands and thousands of micro moments of muscle memory where your eye to hand to paper has learned that a certain twitch, a certain action, a certain something gives you an effect. And that's built up over many, 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 many years. And I guess becomes the technique, it becomes the brushstroke, it becomes what makes it you. And I haven't been able to learn to do the same inside Photoshop using the Wacom. But then other people, of course, who've started with Wacom their entire career, their entire muscle memory, layer upon layer upon layer of experience is captured in that process. So their fingers on their stylus is something they can't then transfer to paper very easily and to a pencil. Hope that makes sense. So I want to try something here. I hope that's all right for you. I would like to read a little bit of the Alice in Wonderland book, and perhaps the prologue again. I'd love those of you who haven't discovered it yet to come to the site and read it. I'm going to read it now because there's no more questions. It's not long, so bear with me. 4th of July, 1862, Foley Bridge, Oxford, England. She felt a little nervous about this, for it might end, you know, said Alice, in my going out altogether, like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then. Thunder rolled in the distance, a summer storm brewing off in the west. They would have to finish the picnic and leave, but Alice wasn't ready. This would be their last outing together, and she had to make them understand everything depended on it. Sit down, Alice. It was a wonderful tale, but you've not had a single bite since you began. Emily pushed a plate of sandwiches towards her. Alice looked at her friend and their chaperones, the Reverend Thomas and Mr. Dodgson. Sorry, she said, and she sat down on the blanket. Alice had been pacing as she'd read the story to a small audience. They all seemed engaged, yet none grasped the purpose of the story, how it was more than a tall tale constructed for their amusement. How could they? I like the tea party best, said Emily, though all the business about time getting stuck at tea time was a bit odd, don't you think? It might appear so on first reading, said Alice. She looked across the river to the meadow beyond. The simplicity of the setting, the normality of it, tore at her heart. Could she really keep all this safe? Was she prepared for the price it would exact? Summer light was casting dappled gold on the world around her, on the towpath, the arched bridge, and the distant church. She scanned it all, her back straight, her neck stretched, like a creature of prey on high alert. Nothing caught her eye, yet she knew they'd be coming for her, the men of the rose. I will eat it if you make me a promise, Alice said, taking a cheese sandwich. Name it, said Emily. Alice fixed her attention on the bespectacled writer, Mr. Dodgson. I want you to arrange for the book's publication. Publication? Yes, and exactly as I've written it here, Mr. Dodgson. Not one word can be changed, not for any reason. Can I rely on you, please? The group seemed a little stunned by the request. Alice, said Mr. Dodgson, the tale is engrossing, certainly, imaginative, quite definitely, but no publisher would commit to such a flight of fancy. Not one penned by a young and unproven writer, no matter how talented. I quite agree, replied Alice, which is why you should publish it under your own name. Me? Dodgson appeared flattered and confused in equal measure. If it is to be published, it must be in your name. You must take full credit, Alice. Then use a nom de plume, some blend of us both. My middle name would do. You could write as Mr. Carroll. Alice had been reading a story from the 4 thick school books, every page covered in her own meticulous writing. She stood and placed the volumes into Mr. Dodgson's hands. Mr. Dodgson, as you rightly point out, my age will be a barrier, so I entrust this to your care. There are a few pages of instruction at the back, but please, not one single word of change. The text has been constructed to both mask and to reveal. There are keys buried within anagrams. There are riddles designed to obfuscate. And there are entire phrases where the number of letters themselves will guide the reader on how to step through those puzzles. So not one word of change, Mr. Dodgson. May I rely on you? I will do my best, young lady. That at least I can promise. Alice knew this would have to do. For safety, she had made 3 handwritten copies, but having it published was far safer. There would be multiple copies, hiding the secrets in plain sight. Others would need it one day, if she was ever to be rescued. It began to rain, and they scrambled for cover. The downpour obscured everything as the carriage pulled up. A bolt of lightning cracked and lit the face of the manor house as Alice stepped down and raced to the front door. She glanced back up the driveway and saw no sign of pursuit. For 3 weeks, she had sensed the men of the Rose closing in, and last weekend, her encounter in a small Charing Cross Road bookstore allowed for only one explanation. They knew her identity. She had turned over too many stones in her search for the true history of the young boys. How cruel that an act of charity might lead to their deaths. Yet she might still save them, even at this late hour, 2 innocent boys and all the melancholy folk she had come to love over there. Stepping into the hall, Alice shook the rain from her cloak. She must go tonight, without any farewells. It would be unforgivably cruel on her parents, but if she looked at their loving faces, her resolve might crumble. Alice! Her mother had been waiting. Of course she had. There would be supper laid out. They would want to hear about her picnic. There would be cards and laughter, the little things that made life so precious. Hello, Mother. What a storm. Yes, straight from the Old Testament. The puppies have tunneled under the hearthrug. Light from the library spilled into the hallway behind her mother, a theatrical backlight that made her seem ethereal, almost translucent, as if Alice's decision to leave was already draining her mother of life. We're taking supper in the library. You're soaked. I am a little. We were a band of pirates keeping ahead of the storm. Mr. Dodgson was all but spent at the oars when we finally made it to the boathouse. Splendid. Her mother clapped her hands in delight. Come and tell us all about it, and with as much embellishment as possible. Your father has had a testing day in the city and would welcome the distraction. It was too much. Alice ran forward and threw her arms around her mother. Goodness, what's this about? Her mother returned the embrace, but her body had stiffened. Alice looked into her eyes. There was nothing but love there. Love wrapped in the steel of a woman ready to absorb whatever bad news her daughter might deliver. You know I love you, and your father too. You know that, don't you? Well, of course. And we love you unconditionally. Do we need him here, or is this a conversation best kept between 2 women? What? Said Alice. If you've fallen for the ancient Mr. Dodgson, no amount of brandy would brace your father for that news. Alice almost exploded with laughter. Mother, that is beyond naughty. How dare you? Then what is it? I just wanted to tell you, that's all. I love you both more than you will ever know. Whatever happens, you must remember that. Whatever happens? This is very theatrical, Alice, even for you. A violent crash of thunder shook the house. rattling the windows and toppling a vase from its stand near the front door. They turned to see it strike the tiled floor, but Alice hardly noticed. She'd seen movement through the glass panels, the distorted image of a black carriage pulling up outside. She ran up the stairs without a word. Alice! Her mother followed, alarmed now, as a bolt of lightning struck an ancient oak that towered 3 stories high in front of the old house. The tree ignited like a torch, its light shivering on the faces of 3 men as they stepped from the carriage. They wore long black coats and sported white roses in their lapels. They had put the pieces together. They had come for her. Alice took the stairs 2 at a time, cursing herself for leaving it so late. She ran to her room and slammed the door behind her. Her mother reached the bedroom door a moment later and hesitated. My darling, what is it? Please tell me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. She opened the door and pushed inside, her heart beating in her throat. The room was awash with the light from the tree burning outside. Then her eyes settled on the large antique dresser they had bought for Alice's 10th birthday. There was Alice, in its mirror, waving goodbye, her face wet with tears, her image fading even as her mother reached out to it. Cool. So that's the prologue of Taking Wonderland. The book itself then jumps to the present and a young Ali, who's a great, great niece of this Alice, who discovers the Alice books and realizes they're all a kind of a Da Vinci Code written by her great, great, great aunt, and decides to go and try and find her. Anyway, thank you all for being on today. Sorry about the technical glitches, and we'll find another time that works for everybody very, very soon. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.